Hello human beings, PowerGamer here. Sorry, I was just reading through my old hat collection, and I was trying to find one I got years ago that I was told shrinks over time. I thought that was a load of bullcrap until about a week later I realized it was the size of my hand, and now I cannot find it anywhere. Why couldn't they have just made a hat that temporarily shrinks you when you put it on, like the one in that GBA Zelda game no one remembers?
The Legend of Zelda, the Minish Cap, one of the better examples of, oh yeah, that one. This was in that time period where console games were heavily prioritized over handheld games, so a lot of handheld games at the time tended to fall to the sidelines, and this was sadly one of them. It doesn't get discussed anywhere near as much as the console Zelda games at the time, or even the previous portable entries, but is that because it wasn't as good? Well, given how most people that have played this game seem to like it, I would assume not, but you know what they say about assuming, it makes you look dumb. The game was once again developed by Capcom, and development began shortly after the release of the Oracle games, though it was suspended for a short while as Nintendo began working on a Game Boy Advance port of A Link to the Past, which also included a multiplayer-focused side mode/new game called Four Swords that I may or may not talk about at some point. I honestly don't know, but it's not important right now. Either way, this game was intended to act as a prequel to that one, mainly explaining the origins of the Four Sword. The game and title were officially announced in February 2003, and they even launched a website for it in September of 2004. Much like The Wind Waker, the game was given a more cartoony art style and a fairy tale-esque aesthetic to the world and story. They made an effort to make the central hub village of the game feel like a real city with people living in it, and they were able to give it some interesting level design thanks to the game's main mechanic of shrinking Link down to the size of a gnat. Several gameplay elements were inspired by stuff from Four Swords, as well as Four Swords Adventure, which took the foundation of Four Swords and expanded it into a full standalone game. Once again, not sure if I'm ever going to talk about these, since they kind of stand on their own outside of some mild connections to this one, and actually playing them is a huge hassle that I'm not willing to deal with right now. Same goes for Triforce Heroes when I eventually get to the 2010 stuff. The Minish Cap was released on November 4th, 2004 in Japan, and Europe on November 12th, which was the first time a Zelda game was released in Europe before North America. We wouldn't get it until January 10th, 2005, with Australia getting it on April 7th. Like all other Zelda games, it was critically acclaimed and is often considered one of the best games on the Game Boy Advance, but even then, that's only really by people who played it. It did well, managing to sell 1.7 million copies, but that is nothing compared to most of the previous Zelda games. Hell, the GBA port of A Link to the Past sold better than this. To this day, it's actually the lowest-selling mainline Zelda game ever that isn't multiplayer-focused, so yeah, not that many people talk about it unless they're die-hard Zelda fans. But those people seem to like it pretty well, so there's that, I guess.
I've never played this game before, and while I have heard good things about it, I haven't exactly been the biggest fan of any of the previous 2D Zelda games, especially the Oracle titles, so maybe this will be the one to finally improve things? I certainly hope so, given how there's still quite a few 2D Zelda games left to look after once I finish this, so let's see what exactly this one brings to the table.
We open with a backstory, as most Zelda games do. A long time ago, when the world was almost consumed by shadow, tiny creatures called Picori appeared from the sky and brought a sword and a golden light to a hero that was able to save the world. We then cut to the present, where Princess Zelda goes to the blacksmith, Master Smith's house, looking for his grandson, Link. Yeah, Link and Zelda are actually childhood friends in this game, something that wasn't done in the series up to this point. And I really like that, since it gives them more of a connection and makes the quest to inevitably save her more important. Link wakes up, and Zelda takes him to town for the annual Picori Festival, with Smith giving him a sword to be delivered to the castle. At the festival, you wander around some booths and learn that Picori appear every 100 years, but only kids seem to believe in them. Zelda wins a small shield, which she gives to Link, and we learn that a tournament is held at the festival every year, with the winner being able to touch the Picori blade. This year's is apparently a man named Vati, who turns out to be an evil sorcerer that blasts the sword, shattering it, and opening the chest to release a bunch of monsters from inside it. He then turns Zelda to stone, and sets off to find a mysterious force. Link speaks with Smith and the king, and learns that they can save Zelda with the Picori blade, but it's lost most of its power. So Link is given the broken blade, as well as Smith's sword, and is told to head to the Minish Woods. There he finds this talking bird hat being attacked by monsters, so he rushes over to save it. The hat introduces itself as Eslo, and says that it's also looking to stop Vati and restore the Picori blade, so it hops on Link's head to assist in his journey. Link heads to Deepwood Shrine, where he's able to meet the Picori, who are actually called the Minish, and speaks with the Elder, who says that to restore the Picori blade, Link must travel around and collect the 4 mystic elements to infuse the sword with them and restore its power. That's about it. A pretty standard Zelda affair, collecting things to stop the bad guy. Though the Minish are a fairly interesting concept, and it's nice we actually have Zelda in a handheld Zelda game for once, aside from her brief appearance at the end of the Oracle games. Since we're on the GBA now, we're finally back to graphics that are on par with Link to the Past. Hell, the visual style is ripped directly from Four Swords, and it looks really solid. The music, while still crunchy, is the same level of quality you'd expect from a Zelda title, and Link even has his grunt sound effects from the N64 games, albeit extremely compressed. And what do you think the gameplay is like? It's a 2D Zelda game. You should know the drill by now. Run around, talk to people, get items, use items, slash with sword, find dungeon, go through for plot relevant items. It's a formula we've seen 5 times at this point, 9 if you count the 3D games in Zelda 2, and this game game doesn't really shake it up that much, so what does it add? Well, the game's main gimmick comes in the form of Ezlo, the titular Minish Cap. Because Ezlo has magic powers, if you find one of these portal cracks in something like a stump or a pot, Ezlo can shrink Link down to the size of a Minish, or Picori, whichever you want to call them. By shrinking down, you can explore the area from a completely new perspective, and by that I mean you can go through holes and climb up tiny ropes. Though the downside is you can't go over anything even slightly raised above the ground, and any sort of liquid will act the same as a hole, preventing you from progressing. And on top of that, you can't use any items except for your sword, which isn't actually that helpful. That is unless you go through a door, in which case the camera will follow you, and it's basically the same as being big. And these are some of the coolest parts of the game, since you get to see the world around you from a completely different perspective, which I always find neat.
The shrinking mechanic isn't super complex, but its inclusion can lead to some decent stuff, so it works well enough.
Of course, it wouldn't be a Zelda game without a bunch of items, and this game has some pretty unique ones. Of course, you got your staples that are in every Zelda game, like the sword, shield, bombs, boomerang, bow, and bottles, plus the Pegasus boots, and even the Rocks cape returning from Oracle of Seasons. But for new stuff, there's the Gust Jar, which sucks things towards you or shoots a gust of air, the Cane of Pachi, which flips things upside down, the Mole Mitts, which let you dig through walls and on the ground, though this is never actually needed, and the Flame Lantern, which works like the lantern from Link to the Past, only the radius it lights up is much bigger, and you can light things on fire by just walking into them, which does not require a magic meter, so that's nice. A decent selection of items, but nothing all too drastic from before. We're sadly still in a handheld, but the button selection has been improved from before. Slightly. You still use the A and B buttons for your items, however the GBA shoulder buttons makes managing them a bit better, and that's because the R button is used for context-sensitive actions, much like in the 3D Zelda games. You can roll, pick stuff up, and throw things, which isn't a huge selection, but given how annoying it was to constantly select the power bracelet and the other handheld entries, this is a huge improvement. You still have to switch items frequently, especially towards the end of the game, but it isn't even close to how much you had to do it before. And the roll is a decent addition as well, but that's just the R button. The L button serves a completely different purpose. As you go through the game, you'll find these Kingstone pieces inside chests, from enemies, under debris, basically anywhere you can also find rupees. If an NPC has a cloud next to their head, you can press the L button to fuse your Kingstone pieces together, assuming you have the right shape and color. Doing this will cause some sort of effect in the overworld, summoning a chest, opening a pathway, creating an enemy, etc. And it always marks the spawn on your map, which is really nice. If you go to that spot, there's some kind of reward waiting for you, unless you have to kill an enemy first. Most of it is just rupees, or another Kingstone piece, which seems kind of redundant, but the Kingstone pieces are a mildly amusing inclusion, though not much more than that. The only ones that make a big difference are the ones you get by fusing with Tingle and his three brothers. Yeah, like the Oracle games, they use a lot of NPCs from the 3D Zelda games, because they know that's what most people would rather be playing. Fusing with the four of them will open these trees, letting you hit switches, and once you press them all, you get the magic boomerang, which is great.
But my biggest issue with all of the previous 2D Zelda games was that they were either stupidly cryptic, ridiculously frustrating, or both. So, does this game actually improve in those areas? Yeah, mostly.
The overworld isn't very big, and it doesn't have most of the cryptic issues from before. Things are nowhere near as hidden as Zelda 1, it doesn't hide essential items in random places like Link to the Past, and you don't need a bunch of keys to open every dungeon like in Link's Awakening. Some parts can be a little cryptic, but not as often or as ridiculous as earlier titles. The location of each dungeon is marked on the map, and if you forget where you need to go, you can push the select button to speak with Ezlo, who will give you a hint. This unfortunately means all of the pause screens are in one place, which gets extra annoying with the item switching, but still, it's a nice thought. And thankfully, you don't have to push two buttons simultaneously to save anymore. But now we get to the dungeons, which is where Oracle of Ages really piss me off. And thankfully, these things are nowhere near as frustrating as they were in that game. They really ease up on the hazards, and the majority of the ones that are there can actually be removed, so you don't have to worry about constantly dodging fireballs and avoiding spikes while shoving over a statue. Same goes for the enemy layout. There are nowhere near as many enemies as the previous games, so killing them isn't that much of a time sink. Hell, these dungeons don't even have mini-bosses in them like the other Portable games. The closest thing are some rooms where you have to kill a bunch of mildly strong enemies, and even then, most of them still go down quickly. This game is overall a lot easier than the earlier 2D Zeldas, which some might see as a bad thing, but with how annoying those games could be, I am all for it. Genuinely, there are individual dungeons in both of the Oracle games that killed me more times than the entirety of the Minish Cap. Now, while part of that is due to more forgiving dungeon layouts, it's also due to this game being more generous with hearts. It's not as generous as something like the Wind Waker, but it's still much better. Hell, the boss fights even give you a way to restore your health, which I very much appreciate. And there's even some little things, like the chests that hold important stuff like the map and compass being much bigger, and two teleporters appearing by the entrance to make backtracking easier, especially if you die, since the second one usually is right in front of the boss. As for the boss fights, they're also pretty solid, which is great since that's where I felt Oracle of Seasons dropped the ball. Some of them do follow that classic Zelda formula of item sword, but some are really creative in how you're supposed to take them down due to using the environment more or much more varied strategies and attack patterns, which I really like. Though the number of dungeons has been cut down. This game has only 6 dungeons, which is the lowest number of any 2D Zelda game up to this point. But hey, I'll take quality over quantity any day of the week. Also hidden across the game are different sword masters, which can give you special techniques. Some are stuff you previously had by default, like the spin attack, breaking pots, and the charge attack, but there's also the sword beam with full health, the sword beam with little health, a dive attack, a jump attack, and an upgraded spin attack, which is awesome. In addition to rubies and Kingstone pieces, you'll find these mysterious shells, which can be taken to the shop in Hyrule Village. Here you insert them into this machine to get figurines of all the characters and enemies in the game, and the more shells you insert, the higher the chance you have of getting a new one. Why hello, trophies from Super Smash Bros. Melee, and speaking of Hyrule Village, this place is pretty neat, although the only cuckoo is on the roof, meaning I can't attack it. After meeting Eslo, you find Minish Village and meet the Picori, only to discover you can't understand them. Talk with the priest named Fistari, and he tells you to eat this jabber nut which lets you speak their language. It's a good thing he speaks Japanese. Talk with the Elder, and he marks the locations of the 4 elements on your map, and thankfully the Earth element is close by. Go to Fistari, and he lets you pass into the Deepwood Shrine. For an opening dungeon, it has some pretty cool stuff, like stretchy mushrooms you use to launch yourself, and this giant log you have to spin around. You get the Gust Jar, which is used to push a big lily pad, and the boss is Big Green Choo-Choo. Yes, that's actually what it's called. It just waddles around and occasionally jumps. You gotta suck away at it with the Gust Jar, wait for it to fall over, and then slash away. Killing it gives you the Earth element. Head back to the Elder, and he suggests you head to Mount Crenal and find a smith named Malari who can repair the Picori blade. So you gotta head to the opposite corner of the map, yeah thanks game, and don't forget to pick up a bomb bag from this house that's thankfully easy to see along the way. In Hyrule Village, the guards won't let you pass until you talk to the Swordmaster and learn the spin attack, and I, being the gifted young man that I am, went into literally every building that is available at this point except for this one. Well, there goes 20 minutes that could have gone to my shamisen lessons. You also have to go in here and talk to this business scrub to get a bottle. Once you finally reach the mountain, you have to climb it by pouring water on these seeds to grow vines, and these ones can only be sprouted by this special green water. Plus there's these tornadoes that let you glide with Eslo, and I hope you don't die because then it's back to the bottom. Eventually you find the grip ring, which lets you climb walls, making it a bit easier, but this part still takes forever. At the top lies Malari's mines, and if you speak with him, he'll agree to repair the sword. But while he's doing this, he suggests heading to the nearby mine for the next element. Well, that's convenient. The Cave of Flames has these minecarts you go flying in, platforms that crumble in lava if you stand on them for too long, and this is the first dungeon to incorporate shrinking. It's decent, but it can go on a little too long after a while. You get the Cane of Pachi, and the boss is Gleerock, a dragon that spits fire, causes rocks to fall, and spreads lava around the room. You gotta hit him in the back with a cane, but he follows you, so you have to move really fast. This causes his shell to flip and hurt him, letting you climb on his neck and slash his weak spot. I think this could have telegraphed better, but overall not a bad fight. And beating him gives you the fire element. Go back to Malari, he gives you the white sword, and tells you to head back to the elemental sanctuary, which lies beneath Hyrule Castle. Find it in here and infuse the sword with the 2 elements, which increases your damage and lets you make a copy of yourself. Doing this allows you to activate multiple switches and push heavier objects, though the process is pretty annoying since you have to charge up the spin attack, wait for this meter to fill up, and then stand on 2 of these green tiles, which takes forever. The clone will always follow your exact movement, and it disappears if you hit the R button, the meter runs out, it walks into something, or either of you get hit.
So, yeah, not a big fan of this mechanic. Maybe skipping the 4 Swords games was for the best.
Outside, Vati attacks you, and after killing some monsters, we have backstory. Apparently, both Eslo and Vati are Minish, and Eslo was a famous mage and craftsman, while Vati was his apprentice who grew wicked over time for extremely vague reasons. One day, Vati put on a magic cap that grants the wish of whoever wears it, and he wished to become a powerful sorcerer and set out to find the Light Force, while also turning Eslo into a hat. Apparently, the Light Force is a source of limitless magical power, and we need to find it before Vati does. Now you gotta head through the Trilby Highlands, and upon reaching the Western Wood, we cut to Vati taking control of the king and ordering everyone to search for the Light Force. If you reach the Castor Wilds, you find you can't pass without sinking in the swamp, so you gotta head back to Hyrule Town and go in the shoe shop that I didn't know was a building. The guy passes out randomly, so you gotta shrink down, climb the desk, and speak with this Picori who says the guy can make you Pegasus boots, but we gotta wake him up first. Head to the witch's hut in Minish Woods, get a wake-up mushroom, and bring it all the way back to wake the guy up, and we can finally get the Pegasus boots. Back to the Castor Wilds, where you have to use the boots to get across the swamp, find the bow, which lets you kill these statues, find 3 gold kingstone pieces, which you fuse with these pillars, because that makes sense, and go through the Wind Ruins to finally enter the Fortress of Winds. You gotta shrink down to activate these robots, letting you destroy them. The place is a bunch of branching paths, and you gotta get the mole mitts, so there's a bunch of digging. It's not one of the best dungeons, but the boss fight is super cool. It's this giant mass called Mazal, and you have to shoot the orbs on its hand with the bow, hit them with the sword until they explode, then shrink down and go inside the mass to hit one of these pillars. That is so creative and so much fun. Though you sadly don't find the next element, instead you find a stone monument from the Tribe of the Winds that says they left for the skies, but you also get the Ocarina of Winds, which will let you fast travel, so that's nice. Warp to Lake Hylian, speak with this guy who says the path to the Temple of Droplets has only been found by a Minish named Elder Librari, who's in the town library. Unfortunately, the path to reach him is missing some books, so we gotta run around and find them in pretty ridiculous places, including the mayor's lakeside cabin. But on the bright side, you get the power bracelets, which let you push things while tiny. After finally reaching Library, he drops you into a cave and you gotta kill some enemies to get the flippers. Now we can finally swim, which lets us reach the Temple of Droplets, and this isn't just a water dungeon, it's also an ice dungeon. Hooray! Yeah, the physics in here are pretty annoying, and like the Ice Palace and Link to the Past, it goes on for ages. You gotta use the sunlight to melt these ice blocks, and the element is actually pretty close to the entrance, but you gotta open 2 ceiling doors to get it. Along the way, you get the flame lantern, which I'm sure you're not surprised by. Once you thaw out the element, it gets stolen by giant Octorok. They really got lazy with the names. You gotta deflect these boulders it spits at you, then it freezes itself and the floor, and you gotta burn its tail with the lantern while it tries to suck you up. Repeat the cycle a few times and you can get the water element. This is the first boss in the game that actually managed to kill me. Outside, we get a vision from an ancient king of Hyrule named Gustav, who tells you to stand before him and marks a spot on the map. But first we need to go back to the element sanctuary and infuse the sword with the next element, letting you make 2 copies of yourself. But the castle is on lockdown, so first you need to sneak past the guards.
Okay, seriously, why is it basically a a requirement for every Zelda game after Ocarina of Time to have at least one, if not two, crappy stealth sequences. You are not Metal Gear Solid. Stop trying to be Metal Gear Solid!
The spot on the map leads to the Royal Valley, which is a haunted forest that you need to use the lantern to light up. Fight off a bunch of ghosts and do the classic pick the right path game, only this time you actually have hint signs, which is nice. Reach the cemetery and find our old pal Dampy, who gives you a graveyard key, which is then stolen by a crow. Charge into the tree to get it back, and then Dampy opens the gate for you. Genuinely, what was the point of that? Just have him open the gate. Go inside the Royal Crypt, make your way through, and at the end lies Gustav, who gives you a Kingstone and says to seek the source of the flow in Hyrule. Go to Vale Falls, use the Kingstone to open the door, and climb up this mountain to eventually reach the Cloud Tops, where the Tribe of Winds now resides. This part's kinda tedious. You need to go up and down between two levels, killing sharks to get keystone pieces, and then trade with these clouds to make pinwheel spin, allowing you to go up here and enter this tower, which takes ages. Especially with all the gliding you have to do. Climb the tower, and in here you talk to this guy who says the wind element is in the Palace of Winds, which is at the top. More climbing, and hop in this tornado. Here we are. This place is enormous and has an absurd amount of floors. You get the rock skate pretty early on, which is good because you're gonna need it. There's a lot of jumping around in these wind tunnels that you need to glide on. The boss is these two stingrays called the George pair, yes, I'm still pronouncing it that, and you have to hop between them and hit their eyes. The blue one you hit whichever one pops up while jumping over its tail, and the red one you make copies of yourself to hit the exposed ones and then slash away at all of them. This would be a much better fight if jumping on the blue one wasn't so annoying, but after that we finally get the wind element. Back to the element sanctuary, which means another crappy stealth sequence, and we fully restore the blade, transforming it into the Four Sword, which lets you make 3 copies of yourself. This lets us go in here and learn that the Light Force is embodied in Hyrule's princess, meaning it was inside Zelda all along. But Vati overhears this and transforms the castle into Dark Hyrule Castle and turns everyone else to stone. But by using the spin attack, we can shoot a beam to free them. This is the final dungeon, so of course it's huge, and as you're going back and forth all over the place. You mainly have to kill these Dark Nuts, which are the toughest enemies in the game, to open doors and get keys. This allows you to push this block to get the big key and go inside the final hallway, where you avoid this guy, kill these things, and fight more Dark Nuts. At the top you find Vati and Zelda, but he sends you back into the previous room and grows big. He makes these eyes spin around him, teleports, and shoots fire at you. You gotta hit these eyes in order to make him vulnerable. After a while, the eyes start shooting laser beams, and he puts them in these shells you have to remove with the frickin' Gust Jar, which the game is not clear about. After enough hits, the room goes red, and he turns into a giant eye. You gotta avoid purple spikes and electricity while shooting these orbs with arrows so they turn red or blue. Make copies in the pattern of the red ones and hit them all simultaneously, which can be really picky, but this is still easier than the first phase. Once you beat him, he explodes, the room goes back to normal, and we can finally save Zelda. And like Ocarina of Time, the castle starts to collapse, and you gotta run to the sanctuary. But before you can enter, Vati returns, having absorbed the power of the Light Force. He's still an eye, but he sprouts 2 arms that he can disattach. This part is not explained well at all. You need to hit him with the cane, then shrink down, go inside, and hit whichever spider thing has a red eye. I only figured that out because I looked it up. Once the arms are destroyed, you have to make copies of yourself while avoiding lightning blasts. These tiny eyes shoot energy, which you need to reflect, and then you can finally hit Vati. Thing is, you need to hit all 4 of them perfectly or else it doesn't count. Yeah, I am not a fan of this final boss, especially since if you die, you go all the way back to the hallway, which takes forever. But eventually, Vati is defeated, and Zelda uses the cap to return everything to normal. Ezlo regains his true form, gives Link a proper hat, and returns to the world of the Picori, and that's it, the game just ends.
Honestly the best 2D Zelda game I have looked at so far, and it is the earliest one that actually gets a full recommendation from me. I mean, it takes most of what worked about the previous 2D Zelda games and cuts out a lot of the really annoying stuff to make an experience that's overall really solid. It still has some issues here and there, but overall, I'd say I had a good time with this game, and I would suggest playing it if you're interested. Though, it has got me wondering if there are a bunch of tiny creatures all over a place that we can't actually see. Oh, right, there are. They're called microorganisms, and they won't come.